How's it going? In this video, I'm going to run down the main aspects of what Titanfall is in terms of gameplay and in terms of just what the game is. But then I'm also going to recommend like a couple of games based on those aspects that you should probably play within this next month. To start with, is just like running down what Titanfall is. Titanfall is a new game that's being done by the guys at Respawn Entertainment. This is actually their first game, and the big notion about Titanfall being a first-person shooter that has mechs and such in it is that Respawn is mainly comprised of the people from Infinity Ward who made like early Call of Duty games before Modern Warfare 3. And the aspects that Titanfall mainly comprises itself of is like these like main four that I'm gonna run down for you. The first one obviously is like you got weapons. It's first-person shooter, and it's like the best way to really get a good idea of how these weapons are going to work, even though it's like more in a futuristic level of being around like Killzone or Halo or pretty much any shooter in general that has that little future take. But probably the best way to really understand how the weapons are probably going to feel and work is to probably play with their early games from being at Infinity Ward beforehand. Like I would probably say like the best example would be to go play the original Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. If you really want to get a good idea, and if you're not able to play the beta that just recently came out, it's like this is also a good way to get you like ready or possibly get you even more excited by playing these selections of games I'm recommending to you besides just Call of Duty. And then that's like kind of like weapons. Weapons are pretty straightforward. Next one I'm getting into here is like the movement. The movement in Titanfall looks very fluid in terms of the mechs and the pilots, but this is mainly focusing on pilot movement because mechs and Titans are their own kind of thing, because the movement is mainly hugely emphasized on the pilots so that they can maneuver around the Titans and actually be able to escape or get the drop on them. It's like the thing that the movement system has for Titanfall is it's got a jetpack, but it's not like your typical jetpack where it keeps you in the air for a steady amount of time. What the jetpack does is it gives you, I call it, it's probably the best explanation for it is the thruster pack from Halo 4. It's like it gives you that extra boost because it's not really used as a jetpack. It's like turn it on, keep me in the air, let me fly around, like in Halo 4, where it just lets you go to a higher point or increase your distance. It's like the thruster pack that I kind of want to call it now, because that's like it actually sounds a little better. It's like there isn't really any games besides like Halo and other things that have jetpacks in them, and the thruster packs. But in terms of actually seeing like how smooth movement is, I got like two examples for this. One is just a bad example, and the other being a good example of the movement in terms of smoothly moving around the terrain or on a map or an environment. It's like I'm going to start off with the bad example, which is Brink. Now Brink got a huge amount of hype because they had a really good trailer showing off the movement that could be in the game, and it just like looked really sweet. It had style, it had its own kind of like character too. But when the game actually came out, it was not that smooth. And there's just the decision of adding a weight class additional to actually having classes for players to choose from. It's like they added the weight class, and that just, why would you want something that would hinder movement to a degree depending on which weight you choose? If you want to play that, it's like go ahead, because Brink is also a somewhat good example for being a game that has their multiplayer comprised of campaign. Well, their campaign is the multiplayer. It was just weird. It didn't work well. So it's like that kind of brings concern to what Titanfall is going to have in terms of their multiplayer mixed with campaign. Onto like Mirror's Edge, which is the good example for movement because it's got it from looking at trailers, and I actually played a demo of it back in the day, but I didn't actually get the game. It looks really good. It looks smooth and fluid. Probably like the best example to really get you excited, because this is one thing I haven't mentioned yet, is that Respawn, the game Titanfall, is being published by EA, and Mirror's Edge is also an EA title. So they could probably have brought in talent from the guys who did Mirror's Edge, which also Mirror's Edge 2 has been announced since last year. So that also helps with being excited for the movements and how smooth and how easy certain things can be. The next thing to really talk about is the AI controlled enemies and teammates that's going to be in Titanfall. Now the thing with Titanfall that's been announced and has caused small worry for a lot of others. It's like, for me, it was just like, it was a small number to me, because I would have expected there being, it's like, before I actually saved my expectations on something, it's like they announced that there's going to be only 6 players per team, so that's only 12 actual players instead of the AI. So then they said there's going to be like 48 things running around on this. I think it was 48 at least in each map. So there's like 12 players, and that leaves 36 AI running around. And then from what I hear about the AI, between since there's been so much news coming out and people have been talking about the AI, is that it's not exactly as good as it should be. It's like, I literally watched some gameplay where the AI should have easily killed you, but they didn't. So it's like, I hope that gets better, and I hope they get it a little challenging. It's like the best example that I can think of that I've actually played for another game that has AI thrown into the mix of a multiplayer. It's like, it's not on the same level of having enemies running around with guns trying to kill you, but it has that. And the thing is that they're not, the AI in this game is not on specific teams. It is a threat to everyone in the game, and you can use that to your advantage or not. I would really recommend playing Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City multiplayer, because I went to record the footage for this, and I was surprised to see that the multiplayer was still going to the extent that it was. And the thing with the AI here is that it's zombies, and they're also BOWs. The AI for this thing was like, it would target you, but then it wouldn't target you and go off and do something else. Like, it didn't even get distracted. But the AI was actually kind of done well, but again, it's like faulty targeting for the AI. It just took away pressure that didn't need to be taken away. But then the AI also added in an extra amount of death, because you could use them to your advantage. So you see an enemy just running around a group, and then you shoot him, and then he bleeds to an extent, and then the zombies around him would be immediately drawn to him and start attacking through the duration of him bleeding. It's like he would be the main target, and then using that as a strategy was really, really fun to really implement. But the thing is, with also Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, that same as Brink, it's like it had a really cool trailer known as Triple Threats, and it in this video really showed off what the game multiplayer was going to be like. These two groups fighting each other while also having to deal with zombie threats, either one using the zombie threat to their advantage, or just trying to take them out so that they don't get overrun by them. And then you throw in BOWs, and then shit gets kind of crazy. The final thing that I'm going to talk about here is the idea that the Titans are, it's the game's name. It's Titanfall. This is one of the reasons I got really excited, because of how much I was really looking forward to Pacific Rim last year during the same time when I saw Titanfall come out and get announced, and just seeing the videos and other things for Pacific Rim, and oh my god, it was just like oh my god, there's so many mechs. But the thing is with Respawn is that they're not trying to say that it's mechs, because of how things have been presented for mechs and mobile suits and exoskeletons up to this point, is that they're slow and lumbering but powerful. But in this case is that they move. They have all these options to move, and it just seems like it's going to be a lot of fun to play as them. And so they don't want to be labeled truly as mechs. They rather call them Titans, because they're a lot more than mechs in terms of movement. And then there's also the thing with the Titans and Titanfall multiplayer, is that there's this level of what you're going to be versing. It's like, who's versing what? It's like you got pilots versing pilots, you got Titans versus Titans, and then you have the pilots versing the Titans, while they are versing like everything. Everyone's versing everything. Well, also versing the opponents while they verse each other, while they verse you. It's just like in the best game that I can truly think of that has that I've actually played again would be Lost Planet 2. Although Lost Planet 2, not exactly like the best game in terms of being like polished and really good, but it's a game that has that level of polish that it's fun to still play, especially when dealing with the campaign. But anyways, like the campaign side is probably like it's truly a lot of fun, while also being frustrating in its own right. But it has that same like style of having pilots versus why the mechs known as VSs versus each other, while also versing other pilots and players, while also throwing in an added mix of also having to deal with Necrid either at the same time or on their own, while you also pilot in VSs and be on the ground on your feet. And just like versing the Necrid in that game was actually a lot of fun, especially when you're doing like boss battles, except for like a couple of certain ones had some BS moves that toss you all over the place, but it's still a lot of fun just trying to take them out. It's like these things are grand and we have conquered them. So yeah, it's like to run down pretty much the games that you should probably play as well as one that you probably shouldn't play, to see like the kind of like bad example is like try and rent it if you can, or borrow it from a friend who actually has it. It's like the games to run down is like pretty much any shooter to get a good idea of what shooters are like if this is going to be your first shooter, and if you actually haven't played the early Call of Duty Modern Warfare games like Call of Duty 4, Call of Duty 5, Call of Duty 6. Well, 5 was World at War, 4 was Modern Warfare 6, Modern Warfare 2. Although Modern Warfare 2 was all air support. And then when you really want to get used to movement, like again, my bad example, Brink, and again, it's like play Mirror's Edge, because the sequel's going to be coming out soon, and that will also give you an idea whether or not you want to get into that game series. And then for the AI, you just like play the Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City multiplayer, even though it was like just before Resident Evil 6, like I want to say like 4 or so months before. To me, it was like that game was like a tech demo for them trying out having third-person shooting while also being able to move while shooting. But even though it felt like that, it was a little bit more with having that multiplayer campaign that wasn't exactly good in terms of story and actually looking good, but it was still fun to play. It's a fun game to play. That's why it's like my main recommendation for AI. If you know any other games that have AI that you have to deal with, feel free to comment on what those were. And then lastly, again with the Mechs and the Titans, the best game to probably play that has that same level of what you're going to be dealing with while also playing Titanfall, it would be to play Lost Planet 2, because it has its own Mechs while you're also versing other like ground forces, while they're also versing other Mechs, while also throwing in the added mix of Necrid. And that's pretty much what you should play. And right now, like all those games are kind of old at this point, so they're pretty much on the cheap for you to be able to get. So have fun. Again, if you have any other game recommendations to give to others, feel free to comment in the comment section below, or do your own like video explaining like why these games would be the best to play while you wait for this next month for Titanfall to get out, especially if you can't play the beta right now. And again, if you like how I talk and how I present myself, like feel free to subscribe. And I'll see you again for when I talk about my hopes and concerns for Titanfall.